I am unashamed. What about you?
Well, I should have worn another hat. This is a weird looking hat I'm wearing.
It's kind of got a. I always think of medievals like it should be inside like some armor.
Yeah, it's like on a tank going by.
Yeah, that's right. Like one of the tank guys or a knight on a horse. It's like a.
I've had about 3 people in the public say, like at a convenience store, say, "Where'd you get that hat?" And I've said the same thing. I don't know.
It just showed up.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know where.
Sometimes you don't have an answer for the particular wardrobe you ended up in.
Well, I noticed, I hate to put genders in a box, but these women, they talk about all the time where they get stuff and things are on sale. And
Yeah.
because Missy asked me, she's like, where did you get that hat? I said, I don't know. I said, you don't like it? And she went, no.
So based on that response, you're not sure if the people at the convenience store were saying that because they wanted one or because they're like, what's wrong with you for wearing that?
So weird. Our culture's so weird because most people, they feel proud of like wearing something that other people like, especially my wife. They have all these but I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that you don't like my hat. I'm proud of that.
Right.
You don't have to make me feel better about. I'm no fashion guru, obviously. So.
Well, and also
when I retreated from the, standard procedure. We live in a town of about
West Monroe's about 30,000.
30,000, 40,000 across the river.
Once you put it together, it's about 60, yeah.
But if you don't ever, for about a decade, go to town, get out of the vehicle in a parking lot, if you don't ever do that, and after about a decade, there's a book signing. You're the one that lined it up, I guess. So we got a little book signing here.
It wasn't exactly me, but yeah, I was a part of it.
I got me a couple of bodyguards just in case. I said, you want to know how much we've deteriorated in the last decade? I said, because I haven't been shopped or been inside that we had one.
I noticed the longer you're away from the public, you're a little more paranoid about it. You've broken out the Kevlar,
it was the strangest thing for a decade. And I walk in, this place called Books A Million, and I looked and around.
Were there 1 million books in there?
Yeah, or more. And I just looked around, and if you don't ever go into a particular part of the forest, you have no idea what's going on in that particular area. I walked in there and I was just looking around. And
were there other people in there?
Yeah, there were a few people sitting around that,
is that place still in business?
It's still in business.
There wasn't a large crowd that had gathered, for sure, so maybe not enough advertising, or maybe a prophet's not accepted in his hometown. I don't know.
I think it was a lack of advertising and marketing, to be honest.
I looked around, and of course, the few people that walked up there, and I signed a few books, they knew me, but, of course, I had no idea on just the ebb and the flow of city life, but if you stay away from it for 10 years, you go, it's a strange feeling. I mean, you're talking about feeling like you're out of your element. If you don't do something for 10 years,
right,
you don't participate at all.
You've removed yourself from, except for your Sundays.
I think you've fallen through a crack of civilization.
Well, it was a strange feeling. I was looking around. I just didn't feel, what's the word? I just didn't feel like I was
comfortable.
Yeah, I was just watching people walk, and they'd come in, walk around, looking at books, and I think,
strange, huh?
Here's what they do.
Very strange.
This is very.
I was thinking they seemed strange, and they looking over at me thinking, who is that?
Well, you are strange, so.
No, I'm not.
No, I think you are. But I think that's okay. That's why I'm saying it doesn't hurt my feelings that people don't like my hat.
But I wouldn't do that at all now that I went back after a decade. I haven't shopped or been in a. They did film one little blurb about when I gave my woman the necklace. They filmed that.
You went to a jewelry store.
It was like to a jewelry store, and they had the camera set up, and I walked in.
It was Phyllis's child.
It was more or less an act, so I didn't even count that one.
I think that was a good move, though. You did good.
Yeah.
You got to keep your best friend happy.
Right.
And that was every 40, 50 years, you might ought to go to the town and buy her something.
But people are.
I was kidding.
At least.
Shopping is not what it used to be. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you don't, but you're saying that from down on the riverbank. If you go to Walmart.
I never have been much of a shopper, but the duck call thing, we went out, we met with the public, and we'd go to this little thing, and we'd have a little booth set up where you.
They're still doing that.
Shoppers interacting, yeah, but now the only interaction I have is I sit in my chair, and at 7:30, someone's bing on the computer is going to come on, and I interact with that person.
Yeah.
It's a computer. I'm looking at them. They're looking at me. But that's the only interaction I actually have.
Well, Phil, you need
Sunday
to get out
morning.
more. You need to get out more. Maybe do a late year resolution.
That's right. A little shopping tour.
I don't know what you could do, but maybe you and Miss Kay could.
It's a very uncomfortable feeling when I get in a vehicle, driving amongst other people driving around.
Why is this funny?
And it seems
Feels
weird.
like some kind of deep psychiatric evaluation of civilization. I don't know.
It's just town living, It's
Yeah.
totally
Town
different.
living. Well, I mean, Phil, look, you got to realize I'm up there on the cutting edge. I guess I'll divulge. I thought about bringing this up last time.
But just a constant dose of this, Jace.
Well, let me tell you my
roaming
struggle.
around on streets and going into these places.
Here's my struggle, Phil.
I mean, just a constant diet of that. I mean, I think
hope I'm not gonna-
I said this will drive you nuts.
I hope I'm not going to break a law by sharing this. But so here's the deal. We had this situation come up a few years ago where I wanted some chickens. And oh no, we're are we in the city limits or
No,
outside?
we're
We're
outside.
not, but we have this HOA thing. It's been well documented. People have followed our family. I've had a running battle with them. We do a little skit on the TV show, our little duck show, and I throw them under the bus mercilessly. Well, in real life, I hurt these people's feelings because it's all basically family or married-in family that live in our neighborhood. And so they got to analyzing their policies, and they thought, this is borderline ridiculous. So they made a few changes. So I thought, well, I won this war. I have fought civilization and the rule system, and it's just ridiculous that you can't have your own chickens. So now
You wanted some chickens. That's all you.
chickens, and they said, no, that's not allowed.
It doesn't seem like that request is way out there in left field. I need a few chickens.
Well, in all the papers that we signed when we moved in the neighborhood, one of them in the fine print said that you had to go along with these HOA things. I didn't even know what HOA was. I mean, I signed it.
No chickens in the rules on the
I think it said no farm animals.
No
So you couldn't. It wasn't just chickens. You couldn't have a pig.
No cow.
You can't have a cow. You can't have goats.
No pigs.
And so, they got embarrassed when the show came out, so they made some changes. Well, I'm saying all that to say this, what's happened in the last 2 weeks. So now, I've seen a fox. I mean, it's the biggest red fox I've ever seen. And I've been in the woods my whole life. And he's prowling throughout the neighborhood. Twice he's been right at my neighbor's. He keeps his chickens penned up because one time he let them out, and they refer to it as the massacre of, all the kids were crying. And
I witnessed that.
where you have
So-
chickens, the foxes will gather.
That's
well,
exactly right.
this one has showed up. And so about 3 days ago, I get up. It's like, 6 o'clock in the morning. Sun's just coming up. I'm cleaning my coffee pot up. I look up in my front yard, in between my mailbox and where I'm looking out, and that fox is just standing there in my yard. course, I get my gun. And, of course, I look at my 2 little dogs and say, what are y'all doing? There's a fox in our yard, So I get the gun, try to get a shot. I had 1 shot, but there was too many houses in the background. I didn't want to shoot. So I thought, because that fox is trying to get the chickens, my neighbor's chickens, and we have an arrangement. I do all their wood chopping, when we had the hurricanes come through. I did all that for free because I love my neighbor, but they've been supplying me with fresh eggs. This is the arrangement we have.
That's the old ways, Dan. That's the
So 2 different times I've caught this fox trying to break in their hen house, and they said, we'll keep giving you eggs, as many as you can eat, if you'll take care of this problem for us. Because that's what I'm good at. I'm like, I'll take care of the fox.
So while you're there, before you go any further, I just talked to Curly Don. First time I converted him when he was about 17.
He's a teenager.
And now he's what, 50?
He's Chase's age, yeah.
So sometimes it passed. And I hadn't
Stay away from numbers. Who knows?
I hadn't seen him in 25 years. Well, he rolls in there.
I don't know about that.
No, it hadn't been.
And he told me what we need. He was talking about y'all mainly. He said they're making air rifles now. It's silent. It's no sound. You can't hear the door. And they've got them up to 50 caliber. But he said a 25 caliber would do it.
What's the range on this?
Oh, yeah, for a fox, that fox standing in the yard, you would have you wouldn't have made a sound, and he'd have a piece of lead right in between his eyes.
We got to kill the fox.
If you're going to be in a subdivision and to get around a lot of the rules.
Well, here's what I was
You
going
need
with
an
it.
air rifle, not a stick your shotgun.
I'm not worried about
AR.
the sound,
sound.
of the gunfire. I'm outside the city limits. What I am worried about is then my wife, because I was telling her, giving the play-by-play. But she's like, well, some of the neighbors, they're posting pictures of this fox. They're like, oh, look at this cute little guy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You see? So now I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Rabies carrying varmint.
This fox is coming out in the daylight trying to kill all these chickens that everybody has now because they deem that organic. And I'm like, do y'all not see the problem here? You either got to go to the woods and get the fox way away from here, or you're going to have to shoot this fox if you want the chickens. Because he's not going to let up. He's already letting his guard down. Because why? Because everybody's taking pictures of him and they're domesticating him. He's not wild, which is dangerous. I got little dogs and everything else. This is a big fox. So you say, well, in the civilized world, what they say is, will you call somebody? But you know what they do? They call somebody like me. And they go and they kill the fox. You see what I mean?
Yep.
Once they lose that, once they're no longer wild, he becomes dangerous. So somebody, and I believe this is God sanctioned, humans have to control the ebb and flow of the animal kingdom. That's what we do. We have a problem. This fox is running rampant and wants to kill all our chickens. And we're in a civilized place.
Yep. Since I don't have chickens, I'd say it's about 150 yards up the hill. You come down a little hill and we're in a little pocket there, right on the riverbank. And we have multiple fox dens where they raise and all, holes in the ground. They're just multiple holes in the side of the bank. And it is a mecca for foxes. We see
You're in the woods.
every year. We see
fine out here.
We see
fine out here. What I'm saying
we
is
see
that-
the mama fox, and we see the old daddy fox, and then they're having the young foxes every year. So they're not bothering me at all.
Unless
you decided to start having some chickens, then you'd have.
You can't have a bunch of chickens and have
That's right.
foxes running through the neighborhood.
Yeah, we don't have chickens, so they're not a threat to me. And I said, every fox for himself. Y'all make it, if y'all
I'm
get
the same
nice
way.
dogs.
I would love the fox.
Hang on, Jess, let's take a break. So I found out from our friends at Omega XL that the human body has 360 joints in the body. starting at the top, wind up at the bottom. You're talking about all the way down. And they take a beating as you get a little bit older. There's no doubt about it. And so your joints hurt. As you get older, your body doesn't produce what they call SPM, which basically helps rejuvenate your joints. When you're young, you don't think about your joints hurting. But you get older and you start moving around, you start figuring out you got some aches and pains. So what you're trying to do is figure out a way to rejuvenate your joints. And so this product, Omega XL, specializes in just that. It's made from these green lip mussels. Where do they grow them, Dad?
In the pristine waters in New Zealand.
There you go. And a wonderful product. Take several of those mussels to produce one of these little gels that you take. Here's what you do if you want to check them out. And Dad and I are taking it. It works for us. OmegaXL.com/Al. You're going to buy one bottle, get a second bottle for free. And so it's going to give you about a 2-month supply. OmegaXL.com/Al or 1-800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888.
But I love eating eggs better than I like posting pictures of foxes on Facebook.
It's a continuing scrap in the midnight hours.
But Jase is tapped
of
in.
animals having fights. My dogs having fights with bobcats, foxes, and armadillos, and everything. Possums.
Well, my dogs have just quit. They just
But look, Jason's right. He's tapped into something because I just thought about this. One of my neighbors, a lot of people live in Alabama where we are. They live part-time there and part-time some other place. And so there's one couple that's from a big city. And so one of my other neighbors was telling me that they had seen 2 copperheads, right there in front of, right at the doorstep. A copperhead, they'll get right at the doorstep.
Yeah, we killed 2 in our yard 3 days ago.
So my neighbor finds out, so I got to get over there and kill them things. And so he mentions that. He said, look, I'll take care of that for you because, they're kind of big city folks. And they're like, oh, no. We would never kill a snake. They're part of the ecosystem. And they go into this whole thing. And I thought.
So would you rather us die?
well, that's what a neighbor said. He said, hey, I got 2 dogs. I don't want a copperhead slithering around our yard here. It's dangerous. We got little kids. Plus I told them the story about Mac Owen. They like to get right there at the bottom of the steps. Yep. You take a step over one and he'll just zap you right on the heel.
That's where these 2 were. They had crawled up under some, to beautify the landscapes. Miss Kay got with some guy and he put rocks, some rocks on the side of the slope there going down to the riverbank.
Right.
And he put some rocks here, there, and yonder. Well, them copperheads, that's perfect for them.
Oh, they blend right in.
Yeah.
That's what
some guy was cleaning up the flower beds the other day. We converted them way back. I can't remember what the name was, but anyway. But he was just pointing out the fact that, he killed 2 copperheads right there in the yard. I mean, about 20 feet from the front steps. So,
but society is too react. They just react.
You got your woman there. She's walking around out there looking at the flowers, and if it's snake infested, you'll kill the snakes.
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But in our society, they wait. A bear mauls a family, and then they go kill the bear.
I would say
once the bear leaves the woods and gets in your yard, take him out.
I've killed 100 at least, more probably, of through the years of poisonous snakes that would really be detrimental to your health.
Right. Well, I take it back to the
5-foot rattlesnakes. They're 5 feet long, and you look at one of them, you say, "Oh, you'll."
I take it back to the very beginning. Last podcast, we talked about God's order, how He made man, woman to rule the earth. That was the way He put it. And if we're to rule it, that means that things that will damage us in the rulership, that's just the law of the God's order.
Well, the problem is when you don't answer the question how we got here. If your answer is not the God above, well, then you get into thoughts like, well, this is where we came from. We're actually us and the animals, and then we're going to live in harmony, and that works until someone gets clawed or eaten by an animal.
Jay, I thought about you, Jay. I was watching. I wish I remembered the guy's name, but I don't. it was on an interview, and I just kind of came into it, but it was on a news show. But what struck me was he mentioned your questions. He said, here's the way he put it. He said, fewer and fewer people are asking the most important questions. And then he hit your questions. He was like, why am I here? What is my purpose? And he started.
How'd I get here?
Yeah.
What am I doing here? And how am I leaving? Those three questions are.
He worded it a little differently, but it was your questions, and he was like, his observation was, fewer and fewer people are even asking that question. They just don't think about it anymore, or whatever. I mean, I didn't see the whole interview.
Bad for society when you can't answer those three questions.
Yeah, or when it doesn't even come up anymore. You're so caught up in the minutiae.
It is an interesting little text while y'all are there. Ask Job, this is Job 12, ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds of the air, they'll tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In other words, put them there. In his hand, this is an interesting statement, because a guy wrote me a letter, and he said he believes that he'll have his favorite dog that passed on a few months back. The dog died, and he said, I think he'll be there in eternity. But anyway, which of all these things do you not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? When you look at the animal world, the fish and all that. In his hand, in God's hand, Job's talking, is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind. So that's a pretty interesting text about the animal world, God even knowing them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, the question would be, are you going to have your pet dog in heaven?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Dogs are interesting because they do have a spirit. There's no doubt about it. But it's the soul part that they don't have because there's no conscience. Mm-hmm. But they do have a spirit, so I don't know. Maybe all animals do, but I know for sure a dog does because you can be around one and realize they're high-spirited, they're low-spirited. I mean,
some of our listeners might want to make a comment. There
is a movie that said all dogs go to heaven. So
yeah,
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't either.
I put any other, animal in heaven. On ducks and fish. I ate some crappie last night.
Yeah,
I sent them on to that great crappie lake beyond.
But I wonder how, you think about it, it's been thousands of years. I mean, we're talking millennia where dogs have interacted with human beings in different ways. I mean, their breeding, they help mankind.
It's amazing how smart some of them are.
Right. Well, you think about all the hunting dogs and going all the way back, but their role was they had a special interaction with mankind. I don't know how far that goes back.
To me, the important part is you have to have that order of God, humans, animals in that order. So it's up to us to make judgments on these. If you have a fox in a civilized neighborhood that is running rampant, is not scared of humans, and is out to kill anything that moves, well, as a human and a love for my neighborhood and for chickens,
right.
You have to make a decision.
You get on up in the Northwest out there. I mean, Stevenson and all tell us they're just sitting there drinking a cup of coffee in their living room, and they'll look out through the side doors there and got the curtains pulled back, or they got a view of the Rocky Mountains. And he said you'll just see mountain lions literally walk by on your porch. I mean, pretty good size, mountain lion, pretty good size cat.
It's a big cat.
And Stevenson sent us some pictures. That's Dan's dad, and he'll send a picture every once in a while to be just a mountain lion. Oh, he's 20 feet from him.
Yeah,
this thing here will kill you.
That's right.
And eat you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're big enough to be a predator.
Oh, yeah.
If they choose to be.
But of course, I don't know what kind of rules they've got on them, but, Gary sure doesn't fool with them.
I'm pretty sure you can't shoot them. That's why I said.
He films them.
Yeah.
But, when in these subdivisions, there's deer walking around out there, and And, where Burley and them are, they're seeing, mountain lions, moose, elk, whatever.
But a lot of times when they're
Elk, I guess,
when
more
they're
than
doing
moose.
what the fox did is doing in our neighborhood, Jace, the state will commission hunters to go and kill a mountain lion if he's killing people's livestock, and so even there's a realization in government that you can't have.
But there's a certain group of people that are
I would
upset
never. That's right.
Every time they won't drive on an interstate because they don't want to kill the bugs hitting the windshield.
Yeah.
Well,
You can carry it too far.
yeah, I think that's too far.
Let's take another break. So, Dad, I don't know if you know this or not. How much equity you have in your home? Do you know that?
No.
I didn't figure you were the guy that took care of that. Jace, you probably don't know either, do you?
Tell us.
Well, I don't know how much equity is in your home. I know how much equity I have in my home, and I can't imagine if a cyber criminal stole that equity, which is happening, unfortunately, around the world. That's a big part of a person's savings is the equity they have in their home, because your house is usually your greatest asset. You sell it, whatever equity you have, that's money that you make. If someone comes in online, which is what they're doing, some cyber thief, and your deed, which is the only thing that says you own your home, is kept somewhere online, he forges and says that now he is the owner of your home, and then he steals the money that you have put into your home by, using it himself or taking out loans or whatever. This is the FBI says one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com to get the peace of mind of knowing that your deed is protected. HomeTitleLock.com, that's HomeTitleLock.com, and make sure that you own your home. Well, anyway, Chase, we hope you get that problem solved.
If I do, you won't hear about it.
Well, the main HOA guy had a conversation with Jay this last week, and he said, we got a fox problem in the neighborhood.
Oh, he acknowledged it.
So he acknowledged it, and even told Jay, he said, you need to take care of it if you can. So he knew, he probably wasn't aware.
I'm feeling better about this.
So there's a posse being formed by the HOA people that the fox has to go.
Well, I had 3 seconds, and we wouldn't have this problem. But I whistled at him, but he stopped. But if he'd have stopped, if I'd have done this 3 seconds earlier, I'm not going to shoot toward a house.
So that conversation, I'll bring that up before we leave this, which was interesting, and to show you how you get things out of order. So the same guy, who's our HOA guy, he told Jay, he was like, because Jay was calling him about something else, and he was like, yeah, I'll help you out. He said, look, could you help me out with your dogs? Because they're barking every night between 1 and 3 a.m.
Yeah, I hear him.
And so he's like, can you do something about that? Of course, I've already talked to Jay about it.
I'm pretty sure they're probably barking at that fox.
Well, and one other thing, this same guy, HOA guy, has put a deer feeder behind his house. So it's drawing every deer in that area. Well, guess when they're coming to feed? Between 1 and 3 a.m. Yep. So between the fox and the deer, the dogs are going berserk because you got all these animals that are invading their space. So it's kind of a weird phenomenon that we're drawing in all the outer things. But then, of course, Jay's like, well, why would I have dogs? Their main goal is to be there as an alarm system for me.
Yeah.
But which you've rendered that useless. Because now everything else is triggering my dogs. I got them there in case some sinister person wants to come on my property. So it's an interesting discussion that we're trying to figure out what to do. Because the answer is to put the dogs up. When you put the dogs up, then they're not there to alert you if something's going on.
I would say you need to get a noise buffer. They have these apps now where like you can have a jet engine. I mean, you won't hear the dogs barking if you put it right by your ear. Well, you can put a fan.
Yeah, I think I'd just stick with the dogs than have something like a jet in my ear.
I don't. What's worse, a jet engine or a dog?
I'm on the road all the time, and you go to these hotels where the walls are thin. I mean, I go with a jet engine. You get used to it after about 5 minutes. and then you can't hear
Right.
what's going on out there. You wake up next morning. Oh, okay. All right. Here, turn the jet engine off.
Well, I think our solution is we're going to put the dogs up because they're not really, I told Jazz, well, they're not really alerting you to any danger because all they're doing is barking
What
at
about somebody coming up in the yard?
Well, I said there's a trade-off somewhere.
You need to try what I'm telling you. People do.
But then you got to have everybody in the neighborhood doing that because if you don't do that, then the dogs bother you.
Well, we've trained ourselves to recognize the difference between the dogs barking at a possum and barking at a human.
Well, right. You can tell.
There's a different, you can tell.
You can't.
Like my dogs, they
I
don't.
can tell when somebody's coming up on the edge before they even get to the porch.
Their bark is a different kind
Their
of bark.
bark is somebody is right here in the yard.
You've learned how to speak dog.
That's right.
Because you got it. You got their different timbers. They're more excited if it's.
But I have some pretty smart dogs, but if you say, where's Miss K? They'll go. They're looking out the window. I said, here comes Miss K. They all get to the window. They all run to the window, and they all look and say, but then they just, they all run and meet her out there in the yard, So they can understand the English language.
Right.
How you doing? Miss K's on her way. Shut up. They understand it.
Which, to my point, I think it puts dogs, and I'm sure now I'm probably getting in trouble, that puts them in a different class among the animal world. They seem to have a different interaction with human beings than any other animal.
That's true.
Even a cat, and I know there's cat people out there, but they don't interact the same as a dog does. A dog has a recognition.
Miss K showed me somebody, and there was a cat and a bird, a parrot. A parrot was sitting on a little thing like this.
This is not going to end well.
Cat's, and the cat's right here. And look, the cat's going.
Mm-hmm.
He's petting the bird.
And the bird, and the cat being very careful. That cat's just smoothing his feathers out.
Tell you what that cat's doing.
I said, Miss K said, have you ever seen anything like that? I said, well, it's somebody that had trained the cat. This parrot is your friend. And
this
the
is
cat
my
was
point, Phil. That's all really good until the cat gets hungry. And one day, it's just happy.
I thought that, but
happy.
But he was being very careful not to hurt this thing. So whoever trained him had spent quite the time to get the cat to.
But Jase is right. At the end of the day, the instincts that the Almighty puts in them. Look, when we were down watching Mike the Tiger. Now, so this is
it's his hand is the life of every creature.
Well, he made them all.
Yeah. So
I'm watching a tiger that was. I remember when they first got him, he was very small. So he was just what would you call it? What's a tiger? A cub? I don't know what they are. Whatever. Yeah. So the little small tiger, totally raised in. In a captured environment. Mm-hmm. So now he's 5 years old, big, full-grown tiger. He's in his little cage. People come and look at him. I mean, his life every day is thousands of people coming, looking in the cage and taking pictures. And they had a couple of signs up, and one by a glass that's next to some water. It said, "Don't turn your back to the glass," which I thought was interesting. I read that. I thought, The rest of it is just mesh going all the way around this. They probably got an acre of land that this tiger lives on. Most time he's just sitting up there. He'll walk around a little bit. But I noticed some people were taking some video pictures, and they turned their back on him. And he was sitting up there on that hill, and all of a sudden he got real still. And then he took off at a dead run towards this little family. I mean, they're standing 5 feet from me. And then he just did when he got to the thing, he just did a hard right. Of course, they all screamed and jumped. And did you get it on the video? But I watched that, and he did it a couple other times while we were there.
There's a reason they're saying
he's a predator. So I looked it up. I Googled it. I thought, that's what they do. When you turn your back, you're in the wild. They see somebody not paying attention. They get down low. That's when they attack. But I thought to myself, here's a tiger raised in captivity. But in deep, there was still that instinct, even though he knew that was, I'm in a cage, I can't get him. But for a minute there, he was hunting.
Yep.
And it was just like,
And if they had been within his grasp, he'd have taken them.
well, that's why you can't mess around with a wild animal. I mean, even if
I don't like pinning them up, honestly. I mean, I brought this up before. I mean, I just like for them to roam, stay in their lane,
Me too.
out in the wild. I just don't like caging them up,
yeah, me either. It goes against everything that they were made for.
I like that's why I like the doggy doors now. I mean, that was a good invention.
Yeah.
I mean, I got dogs, they can come in, but I mean, I want them to be dogs.
Right.
Get out there. You're not a part of this family, as far as a human. We love you, and you got a role to play.
Right.
But go outside. Do your doggy thing.
Because really, they're meant for it to be outside.
Exactly.
Let's take another break. So, Dad, you probably wouldn't know this because I think you send Dan in to buy most of your groceries these days, but grocery prices, especially meat, has skyrocketed.
Tell me about it.
With with everything going on with inflation and just all these control issues about getting product here. One of our sponsors, which is a great company, is a great antithesis to that because you order from them. They've stayed pretty much the same on their pricing and on their structure. And the good thing about this is you order from these guys at Good Ranchers, and then they're going to send it straight to your house. And it has a really good locked-in price for you. So it's very affordable, but it's also a good product. Their beef is prime and upper choice, which is the top two highest grades. Everything they have, I've tried everything that they sell, and it's all really good. We want you to check these guys out. You go to goodranchers.com/Phil, and you're going to get $30 off their already low prices just by going. You can do a one-time order, or you can subscribe and save an additional $25 off of each box. Plus, when you subscribe, your price will never go up for the life of your subscription. So it really makes it inflation-proof. So check these guys out, goodranchers.com/Phil. Use the code Phil. Enjoy your box of 100% American meat and your $30 savings.
They can come visit.
Right.
But
yeah.
Because it's the same thing. Yeah, there's people that they'll have dogs and cats. You can go in there and you're like, ooh, what's that smell? Because they're literally just, they don't understand indoor plumbing.
No.
And they're just cleaning it up. I mean, every day, it's just, ooh. I mean, I just couldn't do it.
Although Alex told me that you can train a cat to use a human pot.
I'd like to see that.
She said that's doable because she has a couple of cats, and so she said, "I think I need to." She ran,
I think I'd get into a little more worthwhile venture of life than training your cat to get up on
to use the pot. Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, I'd give you $20 just to see it.
Well, it was on a movie at some funny movie where he had trained his cat to do it, but I thought it was just a joke. But she said, no, you can really do it. I mean, cats are trainable in that way. I know they're funny about that anyway because they use their litter box, and cats are a little more tidy.
I don't know. You got me on that.
Well, look, we're about to get into 1 Corinthians 15, but I thought before we did that, because to me, that's sort of the crescendo of this letter. And then when you get into 2 Corinthians, which we're excited about getting to, it's a lot of really good stuff to me that kind of comes out of that whole idea of chapter 15. But before we get there, I thought in the rest of our time on this podcast, we could sort of go back and look at everything that got us to this point. Because this letter we've said from the beginning is unique in the sense that it was very directed at some of the issues that were going on at Corinth, which made it different than some of the other books or letters that Paul wrote. And one of the things we talked about at the very beginning was that unity was sort of the major issue with this group of people. I mean, is that fair to say that it seemed like disunity and division was their major problem, whatever it was playing itself out to look like?
You could take 15 or 20 people and put them in a structure and let them keep meeting with each other for the next 50 years. And it's pretty amazing how if you don't have 15 of them, But for all of them to get along over a long period of time is a major task.
Right.
And there's not but 15 of them. You probably could get down to 2 or 3. And
Well, you still probably have problems.
Then you get into like the marriage situation. You say unity, even when there's just 2 of you, husband, wife, you'd say, well, they can get along. They're going to make a vow and they'll get along with each other. Well, about 50, 60% of them, no.
Well, and Jase has talked about this.
I'm just saying unity among the human race, just look at the world and what we're seeing now in modern America, you're like, boy, for human beings to get along with each other and have unity under one guiding principle is a bone to be chewed.
Well, and the reason why is because we're all different. There are different ways of looking at things. All the evil ones' ways of attacking us, which we've talked about on the podcast before, envy, jealousy, selfishness. I mean, you look at all the different things,
and
the sins.
I would say lack of forgiveness.
Correct.
Just let it ride. I mean, let's not make an issue out of it. I mean, it's
really just something you can't. People just decide they can't get past something.
Yeah.
Whether it's something
Well, they call it, Jason,
sinful,
irreconcilable differences.
irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
So, I mean, God has given us the way to have reconcilable differences.
I don't know why they tend to blame God for their not being able to get along, their disunity. They'll try to blame God and say, well, wait a minute here. But instead of the evil one, you got to remember less than 50% of America at this moment would say, because of the love of God, this is the way I'm going to roll. That's less than 50% of us out of 320 million people. Well,
it would be
the numbers are getting, it's beginning to be, religion was a big thing about the founding of the nation, big thing. They held on to it with both hands.
Right.
And everything they did, I mean, from Thomas Jefferson and all of them, John Adams, George Washington, they were godly men, Bible thumpers, the whole bunch. And now there are people so proud to get out from under that, the ravages of, faith. They don't like people of faith anymore.
Well, you said 50%, but it's even far less than that because that's just people that even recognize there is a God.
Yeah.
Once you even recognize that, to actually live and love and to be able to live a lifestyle where you're unified with people, I mean, that takes a lot of effort.
My point is, when you read a Bible, which I know it's off limits for half the country, they wouldn't touch it. They'll get that Bible out of my face. But if they read it and just looked into it, the discussion that we just talked about love, love is patient, it's kind, it does not envy. He's trying to get them to come together and be of one mind, and it's a healthy mind. Most people are looking at it, the unbelievers, and are saying, that's a bunch of bull. It's a bunch of bull.
Right.
It's just a fiction. It's not real. But tried and tested, you see the ones who actually love one another, you say, no, it'll work, but it's evidently it's for everybody.
Right.
But
yeah, a lot of people miss it.
But it also says love is...
Take our last break, Dan.
It also says love is a decision. It's
Right.
a daily decision that you make.
Yep.
Especially in view of God's love. It's like in your marriage, you're going to have bad days no matter what you do. You can do everything right. You're still going to have bad days.
Right.
Circumstances, things change. I mean, life is life. I just always viewed it as the Christian life is the harder life to live.
Yep.
I mean, that's the bottom line. It's harder. You're putting yourself under a code and a standard of morals that's way above what the world is, even if you can find one out there.
But until you make a heartfelt, not with the pump, it's just pumping blood here, heartfelt, your conscience, tells you, what's the Romans 2 text? It says, your conscience either, let's see, now their conscience is bearing witness, their thoughts now accusing, now even defending them, it's written on the heart. You either say you'll do this and it agrees with your conscience, or your conscience saying, why did you do that? I mean, you make mistakes, your conscience is there to remind you of the mistake, or it defends what you're doing, and it may be wrong, but you say, so that in here, that heart has to change, or you won't have unity among human beings. No way, no.
But what's interesting is that whether you have an awareness of who God is, everybody has a conscience.
Yeah.
Now, some choose to ignore it, some choose to not listen to it.
The law is written, the requirements of the law, which is keep it, it's written on their hearts, the requirements. Their conscience is also bearing witness. Yeah, this is the right way to go. I do what's right. But their thoughts now accusing them, even defending them. So you have this conscience, you know what's right, but you don't do what's right all the time without fail. You make mistakes. Well, because of that, here comes the friction, and you have a world full of people who some wrestle with it, and some just go all in on depravity, and that's Romans chapter 2. Which
I think Al's point is there was disunity at every turn at Corinth.
And
every turn, and it's not what we think. When we had Bowles on here talking about the role of women in that culture, I mean, they were pretty much running things, and all of a sudden, based on all the other surrounding circumstances, when they were getting together, they were just being uncontrollable.
That's right.
And so then when you put that
you saw a little bit of everything. You saw, and that's what he goes through, the thing. You saw immorality. Remember all the whole sections we were dealing with earlier? They're proud of a situation.
Immorality, gross immorality.
That's terrible. They're like proud of it.
Doing the Lord's Supper, not really.
Yep.
For
drunk.
them, and they were taking the gifts God had
suing
given them.
each other.
Right. You had the suing each other. You had the whole idea about the idolatry, which, he was like, that's not even a big deal, but it's so rampant with you. You've made it a big deal. So he spent 2 chapters.
Then they had the gender,
talking about how to deal with each other.
The gender issues.
Yep.
So when you read Philippians 2, when Paul kind of defined unity, it all starts when he says in verse 1, if you have any fellowship with the Spirit, if you have any comfort from Christ's love, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider each other's better than yourselves. You shouldn't look to your own
That's a
interests,
bone to be chewed.
but also to the interests of others. Then he gets into that your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, which is why he gave that order in 1 Corinthians 11.
Right.
And so, I mean, to me, you're going to have to decide, like, when getting in the context of marriage, you're going to humble yourself every day to make this thing work. Now, if both of you do it, you're going to have a vibrant marriage.
Right.
I mean, if just one of you will do it, you can stay together.
You hear people describing it. They describe it in verbiage like thin-skinned or thick-skinned, meaning how much of a brow beating can you take? I mean, when will you draw the line? When arguments start, because they were really having a time with each other. They were just devouring each other,
Well, to me, that was...
They were all meeting under the head of Jesus, who never made a mistake. They had some severe problems.
Well, as much as
but it didn't stop at Corinth. It's here now.
No, it's
too.
here, but it was unique there into what they were dealing with. The most embarrassing one to me, I mean, there were a lot of embarrassing situations they were dealing with, but to me, the most embarrassing situation were the misuse of the gifts. These were things that were designed to help them reach people that were coming in. And I mean, that was the whole idea behind the tongues, and which we talked about that, and the prophecy and all that, was to point people to Jesus. But they were so tied up in jealousy and all these issues they had with each other and disunity, they weren't even able to accept these gifts and use them in a way that built people up.
Where's that text that said these people go out and they're ruining whole households?
Yeah,
you know, people who are just running their mouth.
That was in 1 Timothy.
Yeah, I was going to say that was either Timothy or Titus.
Well, we were talking about marriage because I think it's.
Which, by the way, he puts a marriage chapter right square in the middle of all this.
Well, I keep going back to that Ephesians 5. He talked about all the relationships, but meanwhile, I'm talking about you being married to Jesus, all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he's like, oh, by the way, put on the armor of God. And he gives you all these things to do so you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. And then when he went in, stand your ground. Well, when's that going to happen? It's like you saying, when you turn your back on the tiger, well, you got to remember, Peter said, your enemy, the devil, prowls around looking for someone to devour.
So
like a roaring lion.
Now, in that case, I think when you turn your back on God, all of a sudden, there's something else that gets behind you looking to devour you.
Right.
And it happens pretty quick.
You're making a pretty good case for the devil made me do it.
Yeah.
That's why I act like I do. In other words, if you could take the evil one, if there was no Satan, which most people in America now, they don't believe there's a Satan or a devil.
But they do believe there's evil.
And they don't.
Because you hear that all the time.
But I think what they're calling evil, what is evil? It's a world, it's a group, it's a spirit, it's where things are happening. So at least they acknowledge. When we stop acknowledging good and evil, that's when we're really going off the rails.
Which I've heard a lot associated to Putin, the last month.
Well, it's evil when you have literally no regard for the innocent whatsoever. I mean, you're talking about lobbing bombs into nuclear plants and everything. What's the
schools,
ramifications?
neighborhoods, yeah.
I mean, once, it was an accident. Sorry, when tanks are firing up on nuclear housing, well, the ramifications of that is everybody's going to get sick and maybe die. Do you not have any compassion for just general humanity?
And what's ironic?
The evil one doesn't. So
what's ironic about that situation? Chernobyl already had a big meltdown and killed a bunch of people. I mean, people died around there from that for the last 30 years. Whenever that happened,
it has been amazing to watch that. Even when we talk about the Second Amendment and everything, and the battle that always goes on with that, and then all of a sudden, in this case, it seems like all of America is united in saying, "Hey, go pass out the guns." They're all of a sudden said, I mean, this country is coming in there and invading a sovereign country.
We need to send them some guns.
Let's send them some guns. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What?
I thought guns were bad.
2 weeks ago, you were saying, no, look at these guns. They're terrible. I mean, look at what's happening.
You're never going to need them.
Because when you realize it from a good and evil standpoint, you realize this is just a means to an end. Whatever, if you're good at throwing spoons at people and harming them, I mean, let's get rid of all the spoons. It's the heart of people, and it's what intention is being used, good and evil. Everybody sees it in this case. I mean, here are these people; they're minding their own business.
That's a good point. The same people that wouldn't see it here. All right, we're out of time. In our overtime, I want to give us. There's a early hint and clue into what we're going to get into in 15 on the next podcast that Paul's already looked at back in chapters 1 and 2. So I want to talk about that in the overtime, and then we'll dive into, I guess, arguably, I think, my favorite, but certainly one of the best chapters in any book of the Bible, 1 Corinthians 15.
It's a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.